Palworld has completely exceeded my expectations, and it is absolutely worth a pickup even after the initial hype has died down, and now that the game has been out for about a week since the time of this recording. I'm going to give you just a handful of reasons why you need to pick up this game, and I'm also in no way sponsored or being paid to tell you this. I just genuinely believe in this game. It has a solid foundation and can become an even greater game. I have logged over 100 hours into the game, and I'm still discovering new things to do, having fun with the gameplay loop, and I know that there's still just tons more to do. I haven't felt this way about gaming in years, and so this game has just been a breath of fresh air.
Oh, nice. Let's go.
Love it, man. We love it.
Yeah.
But let's just get started with, what is Palworld? Palworld is the latest game from Pocketpair Inc. and is an action-adventure survival game populated with creatures known as pals. They're basically Pokemon. The comparisons to Pokemon are absolutely inevitable given the art style, but it's just that. It's just the art style that is similar to Pokemon. This game isn't similar for gameplay reasons, but rather, again, just simply for the creatures that inhabit the world, the way that they look, and the way that you interact with them. You catch them in Pal Spheres, which is essentially a Pokeball, and then you have them work for you to help you survive within the world. Up to the game's release, there were plenty of memes that this game was Pokemon with guns and Pokemon with slave labor. Now, I will say that the memes were definitely warranted, but it turns out that putting your pals to work is a lot more wholesome than you would think. They, in fact, actually want to work for you. They smile when they complete tasks, and you can also pet your pals. You can feed them directly. You take care of them when they get injured or sick. It really does feel like you can build a bond with your pals when you first step into the world of Palworld. In some ways, I actually felt that Palworld made the world feel more alive than Pokemon ever did. With all of the different media sources that we have for Pokemon now, we know that they help out human civilization with plenty of tasks like generating electricity and transporting goods. However, the games never really demonstrated that in gameplay form. However, Palworld does it amazingly. If this type of world were real, then of course we'd use these types of creatures to help us with these mundane tasks. Okay, so the world of Palworld is very similar to Pokemon, but what about the gameplay? I mentioned briefly that this is an action-adventure survival game, a completely different genre from Pokemon's RPG style. The closest this game gets to a Pokemon game is the recent Pokemon Arceus game, but even then, they are vastly different games. The action-adventure part really is the only similarity here, and also of the catching of the creatures, the pals, the Pokemon. Unlike in Pokemon Arceus, there are also penalties upon dying in Palworld, so there's definitely a strong reason to ensure you're well equipped and learn how to use the dodge roll attacks, all very staple things in action games. This also evokes a feeling of fear and adventure when you wander into an area that's higher level than you are, or you encounter a field boss that's insanely high level. At the same time, however, it's great fun to try your luck at trying to catch them and defeating them. These are all feelings that you don't really get in a Pokemon game, but you did kind of get in Pokemon Arceus with those alpha Pokemon. Palworld does the action part of the gameplay pretty well because you can also have your pals fight for you while you fight yourself using crossbows, handguns, shotguns, or assault rifles. The game is actually quite hard too because if you're not properly geared, the amount of damage that you're dealing is really not that much. You also really have to take advantage of the type weaknesses to really output the DPS to make these boss battles easier. So this game ticks off the action part pretty well, but this game is also a survival and base building game. The survival aspect of this game is always giving you things to do because you need to farm and replenish your resources. Things like food, wood, stone, fire, and iron, for example, are all resources you need to survive in this world. You'll need those resources to progress your base and make it better. You also catch pals with work sustainability abilities in order to help you complete tasks tasks and maintain your base. For example, mining stone, chopping wood, planting and harvesting berries, generating electricity, or refining ore. That's just a small list of things that you have your pals help you out with. This is also great because it means that you don't need to be doing these tasks all of the time. Having the pals work for you was memed on as slave labor in the beginning, but actually, the pals enjoy working for you. It's a great feeling watching them smile when they complete their tasks. And as I mentioned earlier, when they get sick or injured, just make sure to heal them up, and there are animations for the pals being happy. It's really a great feeling and something that you just didn't really get in other games, especially in Pokemon. It really does help to build a bond with your pals. Now, I have amassed around 100 hours on this game, so you will be changing out your pals as you progress in your base. So that bond that you create as you switch out your pals may change a little bit, but nonetheless, you are still creating a bond by having your pals work for you. As long as you keep them happy with food and a bed, they're going to be happy working for you. And once you get towards the end, then your base is pretty much going to be set in stone, and the pals aren't really going to change after that. There's also tons of creativity for base building. It's a very simple building system, but it gets the job done. You honestly don't even need to step out and explore the world and just stick to building your fortress if that's how you roll. I've seen people who have barely left their home bases and have already created giant fortresses all over Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and Reddit. Now, there are some limitations to the building, but with enough patience, you can definitely make it work. This game is in early access after all. Next is the exploring. Like I just mentioned, you could just stay at home and build up your base, but the exploring aspect of this game is really quite fun. The Palworld map is quite big. There is so much to discover, and the feeling you get when you discover something new is just a massive dopamine rush. Discovering new pals and biomes never gets old, and with over 100 pals to discover, that's a lot of content. And as mentioned earlier, you'll also find field bosses and dungeons scattered throughout the world, and those are great challenges and also just great places to catch and find new pals. Chests are also littered everywhere, which give you gold and loot to craft better versions of your weapons. There's also the equivalent to Korok seeds or Oculus from Genshin Impact in the form of Lithmonk effigies. Collecting these will increase your catch power to help you with your progression to catch the stronger and bigger pals. Now, as you're out exploring, you can definitely lose track of time. So just don't forget to come back to your base every so often to check up on your pals, because I have definitely just gotten so enamored by simply flying around the map and exploring all of the unknown territories. This game also has a multiplayer functionality, and a really fun and enjoyable one at that. Experiencing this game with friends makes it 10 times better, elevating the experience to a gameplay level I haven't felt in years. You and your friends can form a guild and sustain a base together, gather resources for each other, and work as a team to build up your base. Once strong enough and properly equipped, you can take on those field bosses that are way past your level and attempt to catch them. Now, although only one player can catch the pal, it's the deciding who gets to catch it that can be fun, and also everybody anticipating that 5% catch rate to succeed. And then when it does, that hype of catching such a powerful pal is indescribable. All of the gameplay mechanics that I mentioned before this are also just enhanced by playing with friends. Now, that's not to say that the solo experience is bad. In fact, I would suggest going into the game solo for a bit first to understand the mechanics a bit and build up your own base first. You slowly get introduced to the mechanics of the game and what you need to build for your base. And also just that initial discovery and going out into the world is incredibly fun. If you have a friend that you want to convince to join you and you have already progressed far, I would highly recommend that they start their own base instead of getting power leveled by you and just being fed all of the resources. The early game discovery is one of the best parts of the game, so don't rob your friends of that progression and discovery experience. Now, I also had to mention the visuals in this game because it vastly outclasses the Pokemon games in terms of visual fidelity. Art style is its own argument, but in terms of the clarity of the graphics, Palworld is miles ahead, and the performance of this game is great. a smooth 100 FPS consistently except during really crazy raids. Whereas with Pokemon, we were getting like 15 to 30 FPS. I had to mention this because once Game Freak moved on from sprite-based graphics, the visual fidelity of 3D Pokemon games has just been completely awful. The environments use textures from the PS1, PS2 era of games, and it's just not great. And although Palworld has its bugs, it's already 50 years ahead of Pokemon with the graphics and performance. But that's a good segue into mentioning the bugs that this game has. This game is early access, so you're going to run into a fair share of bugs. I will say that I have been able to forgive them because the gameplay has just exceeded my expectations and I have just been absolutely addicted to the loop of this game. There are clipping issues, rubber banding, issues with getting locked into throwing your PAL spheres only, occasionally falling through the map, some field bosses just not spawning, and other minor things like that. There has only been one critical bug in the game that I have run into, and that's when our server hit day 32. Our world got reset and we had to start from scratch. Now, I was a bit angry and disappointed that such a critical bug occurred and that all of my work was deleted, but I was fine with the starting over and going through the progression process again. I seriously had just that much fun. We although did tweak some parameters to make the process a bit faster by increasing the catch rate, but the gameplay loop was still enjoyable with catching pals and upgrading the base. And we were able to catch back up in just a few days. And some of my friends were actually able to catch up in just a couple of hours. That should just explain just how much I have been enjoying this game and also the people that I have been playing with. The progression and gameplay loop of this game is pretty simple, but very fun and satisfying, and it has some great longevity. In a nutshell, this game is to survive by building and upgrading a base. In order to do so, you need pals with the suitable work sustainability skills to maintain the base. So you go out and catch those pals that can do those basic tasks in your base, and then you gather more resources to gear up and get stronger pals with higher level work sustainability skills. This increases the efficiency your pals work to get those resources. You continue to catch stronger pals by exploring the map, all the while completing dungeons, fighting field bosses, and discovering and deciding which new pals you want to be on your fighting team. Once you've geared enough, you can take on those really strong field boss pals and then also catch them. This loops until you've got a strong base and completed all of the field bosses. And after you've caught all 100 plus pals, you can decide to stop playing the game there, or you can get into min-maxing your pals. This is where the real longevity comes. You can improve your pals by feeding them pal souls, which are gathered on the map, or by defeating certain pals. Use these to increase the stats on your pals. Then you can also condense your pals into a stronger one. By catching multiple of the same pal, you can basically feed them to a base pal to increase their base stats. Pals also come with passive abilities that can increase or decrease their stats. So every time you catch a new pal, sometimes they will have a passive ability that greatly increases their attack, or perhaps greatly decreases their defense, for example. So in order to min-max, you'll need to catch and re-roll the perfect passive abilities. Once that is achieved, you then get into breeding. You are able to breed these passive skills into a new pal that has all of your desired passive skills. So say you want a really strong damage dealing pal, you'll want 4 passives that just increases their damage output. Once you breed your perfect pal with all the passive skills that you want, you then power it up by condensing those same pals into your new pal and also by feeding them pal souls. And the thing is, I mentioned all of this after you completed the game. I am air quoting, but you don't need to wait until that point. You can do this at any time with any pal. As soon as you find your favorite pal, you can go ahead and start this process if you really desired. And then you can take that pal to take on those endgame field bosses. You can really play this game in any way that you want. And so min-maxing pals is definitely what you'll want to be doing with all of your favorite pals in order to make the best version of that pal. And that is really going to be your endgame loop. Now, there is still so much more to talk about in this game, but the video is getting quite long already. This game is absolutely worth the pickup even after all of the initial hype from release. The game has a ton of content at base, and it will only continue to get updated. The game got a whopping 8 million sales within the first week of release, so we can be sure that they have the revenue to maintain the game. Anyway guys, subscribe to this channel for more Palworld content. You can be sure to find guides in the coming days and explanations for the mechanics, especially around breeding. The breeding system in this game is quite interesting. If that video is up on the channel now, then go ahead and click here to watch it.